I've been asked to respond to some questions that have been written in connection with the Donaldson's project. We've been involved with Donaldson's on and off now for probably about 15 to 20 years. I lose track. And we're very proud of our work there. And the questions that you've asked me to answer is, first of all, why a crescent? I think there are probably two reasons behind that. Is one wanted to do something at the rear of the site which was focusing itself on the historic building, because obviously that's an extraordinary confection, and a crescent seemed to be a good idea of doing that, so everybody gets to look at the historic building. But also on top of that, it makes a nice connection, I think, across to the crescents in the new town of Edinburgh. I like the idea that we make new architecture which is linked to the places that it's found in, so that there should be some connection in some way. Obviously one doesn't want to make fake architecture, one wants to make things that are true to their own time, but also I like the idea that buildings are kind of rooted to their place. So it's a crescent, but it's also a crescent which is broken in the centre, so that you can see out to the north, and people from the north can see in to the chapel, and it responds, if you like, not just to the four square nature of Donaldson's, but also to the chapel that protrudes out on that side. Was I familiar with the location prior to my involvement in the project? Did you ever imagine new homes would be built there? Well, the answer to that is yes, because we were actually involved with the building when it was actually still a deaf school, and we did a whole series of studies for the deaf school to see how they might coexist on the site. So we looked at studies of trying to keep them on site, and so that was quite a long time ago, and then they eventually came to their own conclusion that they need to move away completely. So that's when we looked at all sorts of different uses for the original building and also for the site. So yes, it's taken me probably the good part of 20 years I've been on and off involved with the building and the site. What were the challenges in designing a new building that sits so closely to the old school building? Well, we were also responsible for conversion of the old school building into housing, so we had two different clients on the same site, of course, so we were very conscious that we have to do all the usual things that you have to do with housing, make sure that people's privacy is respected, their daylight is more than adequate, that there's enough parking, refuse lorries, all that sort of stuff that you expect with a large housing project. But I think the question is really about the aesthetic of the new building, and what I think there we tried to do was to make an architecture of contrasts, and in a way to be deferential towards the old building. So we tried to do an architecture of contrasts, and we tried to make an architecture which was absolutely of its own time, and therefore could have a conversation across almost 200 years between Playfair and ourselves. What do you hope the development's legacy will be? I'm probably the wrong person to answer that question, really, because whatever I say will sound rather egotistical, but I like to think that it might, I hope it'll be considered both a commercial success, a residential success, and also an architectural success. And if you like, it is another, I hope, pointer to the way in which that we need to make contemporary architectural contributions to our townscape, which don't necessarily detract from the original history of the buildings, and in fact I'd like to think put them into new settings and enhance them in a way that wasn't originally imaginable. What, in your view, makes the Crescent special? Is there one standout element you are most proud of? That's an interesting question. I suppose there are two things which three things, if I'm allowed to have three things to stand out. First of all, I particularly enjoy in which the windows slide completely away in the living rooms and are sort of hidden away behind our little study balconies in the two in the projects which interlatch. You know, you've got a ground floor flat and you've got a top floor mezzanine, penthouse, but in between there are two interlocking apartments, and both of them have 1.5 height living rooms. And I like the idea that we don't have balconies on the front of the building, but we actually allow the living rooms to, in effect, become balconies, because the windows slide right away so that you can't see them at all. So you just have an open space between the living room and the vista of the Playfair building. I think that's, on a nice sunny day, that's a lovely thing to do, and it's, you know, not often found elsewhere in Edinburgh. I think the second thing is maybe the interlocking section, which, you know, quite a lot of developers might have been a bit nervous about, but I think Carla have definitely seen the logic of it. And that's very nice, that you get different heights of rooms inside the apartment, and particularly the maisonette project, where you are in the upper level and you look across the living room out towards the view, because the plan is a very deep plan, so it's important that you get those sort of vistas from deep inside the plan. And I suppose the other thing is, when you get up to the penthouses, there's a remarkable amount of outside terrace. In fact, the two ones at either extreme almost have a sort of garden up there, a potential garden. I hope the people who buy them go to town on their gardening, and that's very nice that the whole building becomes inhabited, not just the inside spaces, but the outside spaces too.